ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. من أنزل الأمطار وفجر الأنهار وأنبت الأزهار تزخرف الجبال. من أنزل الأمطار وفجر الأنهار وأنبت الأزهار تزخرف الجبال. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. من علم العصفور في الجو أن يطير ومن جلى الغدير ودفاق الشمال. من علم العصفور في الجو أن يطير ومن جلى الغدير ودفاق الشمال. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله. ذاك العظيم في علا من أبدع الكون سوى سبحان الله وبحمد الله ولا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن دعا بدعوته واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. My beloved brothers and sisters, to our friends and our guests, I begin with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Surely all praises are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and surely the best reward in the next life is for those who have taqwa, who have the consciousness of God. And surely there is no animosity except for the oppressor. And I bear witness that Allah is one and has no partners, and that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, is his servant and his last messenger. And may Allah always and constantly send peace and blessings to Muhammad and to his family and his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, I want to begin also by giving you the salams, the word of peace from your brothers and sisters and from people who are living in North America. And also I want to bring a special greeting from the people of South Africa to you here in Australia. Not only to the Muslim community, but I want to begin formally by bringing a word of peace and solidarity to the Aboriginal people. And I say this for personal reasons. And that is because we are in a changing time. We are in a time where the earth now is going through crisis. And many of the injustices of the past are now coming into collision with society. And so people throughout this world are beginning to understand the importance of returning to the natural way, to the roots, to the foundations of society. And so it is an important action for myself personally, who basically coming from the United States and having lived in Canada, my family would be classified as African American. However, my grandmother was a Mohawk of the Red Indians. And so it is our customary way to ask permission from the Aboriginal people here in this land. And if their representatives are not here tonight, then it's my duty to somehow see somebody from them and to ask permission to be here and to give them our respect and our love and our solidarity. I come tonight with a sense of joy for being in Australia, because it's a long time before I went down under, as they say. But the joy that I have within myself is also touched with a sense of urgency. And that urgency has really come to fruit within my life as a North American, living in South Africa. Because South Africa today is one of the most important countries in terms of exposing the ills of the world and also giving possible solutions to the ills and to the problems. In the area that I am living in the Cape Flats, we have the second highest murder rate on earth, outside of wartime situations. In a peacetime situation, in our area in the Cape Flats, only Bogota, Colombia has a higher murder rate than in our area. And the other night, for those South Africans who may be here, I was going home to my house in Surrey Estate in Cape Town, and I heard something that sounded like fireworks. And I said, well, it's not the national holiday. And then I realized it was coming from a section called Manenberg in Cape Town, and it was automatic gunfire. And it sounded like the Vietnam War or the Gulf War or something like that. And it was only about 3 blocks away from my house. But by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although there is a hot war going on in that side of the town, just 3 blocks away, people are living in a state of peace. We don't have any violence in our area. And it's like another planet. And I reflected to myself, could it be because of the apartheid system? Apartheid separates people. It puts you into a space, into a block, based upon your color or based upon your religion. But apartheid on paper is gone. So what is the difference now? What is going on? The apartheid system is gone. There are no police in the street. But there's something separating the 2 sections of the town. I reflected on this and I realized that in our area, it's 90% Muslim. And so the people who are living in this area have a different lifestyle. And so the lifestyle has something to do with the environment around you, with the atmosphere that is around you. And I reflected upon this as a person who has made a number of very serious changes in my own life. I reflected upon the mercy of being Muslim at that point. Because if I wasn't Muslim, I may be caught in this hot war that was going on only about 3 blocks away from my home. In South Africa also, we have probably the highest rate of HIV infection on earth. It is said that 1 out of every 4 people in South Africa is HIV positive. This is an epidemic, and this is a crisis. And I don't necessarily accept, I am one of those people, if there are any doctors or scientists here, I don't accept all of the facts that are coming in the press about what AIDS is and what HIV is. Because we know that a person who has tuberculosis, or who had malaria, or who had hepatitis, who took the HIV test would also come HIV positive. But whether it is the virus, whether it is that virus, or whether it is tuberculosis, or malaria, or hepatitis, or vitamin deficiency, or lack of proper eating, whatever it is, we are in crisis in terms of our lifestyle. And I reflected because in terms of proportions, you will find the difference between Muslims and non-Muslims is a drastic amount, almost sometimes 500% difference. 500% less people who are Muslims are HIV positive than non-Muslims. And what is this? It's not an apartheid statistic. What could make the difference? I realized again, lifestyle. Lifestyle. Because in order to conquer or to defeat a sexually transmitted disease, then the best way is abstinence. The best way is to know who you're marrying, She knows you, you know her. You each know the families. You're trying to live a clean life. You don't take drugs and alcohol, and you're basically moving in the same direction. And then your chances of getting this virus have lessened to a drastic degree. In South Africa also, there are drugs pouring into our city. And because Cape Town is right on the waterfront, it is the western coast in South Africa, and it faces South America, and then is easily to come from West Africa, North America, from Europe. It is probably the key drug entry point for the whole of Southern Africa, maybe even at this point the whole of Africa today. It's coming through Cape Town. And so there is a sense of urgency because all of these drugs are pouring into our communities with exotic names, and the young people are taking drugs like ecstasy, and as though they are going into a state of ecstasy, and all these exotic lovely names are being put on substances that can have you addicted for the rest of your life. And so therefore, in this land, people are questioning their existence. People are asking why? Why am I here? And where am I going? Because there is a strong possibility that you can die. Now we know that death is something which is written for all human beings. No matter where you live, no matter what your economic standard is, we all must taste death. But those who are facing death, I guess think about it more because the possibility of it happening is greater. And so, lifestyle and being a Muslim. And I question myself about this. I questioned the countries that Muslims lived in. And I questioned the reality of Islam today. When you look at the root term, and this is very important for those non-Muslims who may be here tonight. When you look at the root term, or the root of the word Islam, you find salama, which actually comes from peace, and so it is a form of istislam. It is a surrender or a submission, and in that surrender the person is actually seeking peace. Now that's contrary to what we've learned in the mass media today, because the mass media, especially Hollywood, has a tendency to give stereotypes to groups of people, and for some reason, an economic reason or a political reason, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the war between the capitalist countries and the communist countries, for some reason Muslims have now been designated as the enemy. And so Hollywood is after us. And our young people are bombarded with this. When I was growing up in America, the bad guys were usually Japanese, Germans, and Russians. Today now, the bad guys are usually Spanish drug cartels, Afro-American gangs. But the most sinister character you can bring to the screen is a terrorist. He seizes his hostages, and he won't release them until you release his comrades from the jails. And then the heroes of society go into motion. You probably know some of them. His name is Chuck Norris. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the guy with the big muscles. Steven Seagal with the little ponytail. And so they go into motion to rid the world of the new terror. This is a form of stereotyping and propaganda. Because the reality that I found out is that Muslims are living in every part of the planet. And that the majority of Muslims actually do not come from the Middle East. I have the opportunity to travel around to Muslim countries and to travel around the earth, and we realize, and you are living here in Southeast Asia, and we realize the size of the population in Indonesia, and then going up into China. This is not known by people who are living in North America. You may not be aware of the fact that Islam right now is the second largest religion in North America. It's the second largest religion in the UK and much of Europe, and it is growing in leaps and bounds. And if you take the prison population in the United States, right now, it was reported to me that last year over 300,000 people embraced Islam. And so it is growing in large numbers. And people are saying, well, why is this thing growing, man? I mean, if Muslims are a little terrorist group and they want to blow everything up in sight, and either they're killed or they're killing somebody, then why would all these people in the United States, in UK, in Norway, in Sweden, in Germany, in all parts of the world, why would they be accepting this faith? The reality is something far different. That the word Islam is actually a qualitative term. This is a very important point. That being Muslim does not connect you with any particular race or any particular nationality or any particular linguistic group. Actually, when we speak about Islam, we are talking about al-fitrah. We are talking about the natural state, being in sync or being in tune with the environment. And so with that definition, the sun, which is moving in its own orbit, the moon moving in its own orbit, all of the planets are Muslims. The insect world, moving with instinct, they are Muslims. Anything that submits to the natural order within the universe is in a state of Islam. That is the root definition of the term before we bring our politics and our economics and our stereotyping and our racism. Before that comes in, that is actually what the word Muslim means. And one of the key elements within Islam, or I should say the key element within Islam, is La ilaha illallah. There is nothing worthy of worship but Allah, or the creator of the heavens and the earth. And this is a concept that was shared by people throughout time. Prophets came to China, prophets came to India, prophets came to Australia, prophets came to Europe, to Africa, to the Americas. Allah tells us in the Quran, in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. We have sent to every nation a messenger, that they would worship Allah and stay away from false gods. And so every ummah, every nation at one point in time received a messenger. I've had the opportunity to investigate into the folk cultures of people throughout the planet. And you will find in most of the cultures that preserve their history in an oral form or in a written form, you will find some sort of discussion of an individual who came to them at one point in time and told them, don't worship yourself, don't worship the created things, don't worship the sun, but you should worship the creator of all created things. Go past the material things in life and go to the one who is not masculine, who is not feminine, who initiated life, whose creation is between Kaf and Noon, who said kun fayakun, be and it is. And creation began. And so with that root definition, you will find amongst the Aboriginal people in Australia, in the Americas, in Africa, all throughout the planet, as well as you will find people in nations in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, you will find this discussion of the belief in one God. And so the concept of La ilaha illallah, Tawheed, is a type of unity. It is unifying things, bringing things together. In the religious sense, it gives us the concept of one God. But in a physical sense, in a social sense, it also tells us that all of humanity is one. And that we are actually cousins. We're all part of the same family. And in an educational sense, Tawheed is a type of inclusion. And you will find that the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who came over 1400 years ago, who we see as the finality of a long line of prophets and messengers who came from the beginning of time, that when he sent his followers out, they had a thirst for knowledge. And they realized, al-hikmah dalatul mu'min, that this wisdom, knowledge, is the lost property of a believer. Search for knowledge, seek it. Siru fil ard, travel into the earth. And so you will find, in most of the parts of the world, written information. You'll find some of the oldest maps and the oldest information in most of the countries of the world are in Arabic. And I was surprised to know that the oldest map of Australia was written in Arabic. Al-Khwarizmi, who did this map, it is the oldest preserved map of Australia on written record. We also found in America, in 956, Al-Mas'udi did a map of America, and he did a map of the world, and he drew America and he said, Ard Majhula, unknown territory. It is the oldest preserved map. And so the Muslims then traveled throughout the earth. And in going to different countries, they actually took in the knowledge of the ancient ones. They took in the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians, the knowledge of the Chinese, the knowledge of India, the knowledge of the Middle East, the knowledge of the Greeks, of the Romans, and put it in a Tawhidic type of form. And this is one of the most important blessings of being Muslim. And some of us don't even realize this. It is a Tawhidic understanding to be able to look at another culture and say, in every culture there is truth. And if there is truth in that culture, if there is science, if there is knowledge, I want to share in that. And if I have something to give to the people, especially this Tawhidic concept of one God, then it is my duty to give that to the people so that they will be able to at least enjoy that privilege or that understanding of worshiping one God. And so with this Tawhidic understanding, Muslims then developed a great society. You know, we talk about the millennium today. We say this is the millennium, and you were in an area where a lot of people wanted to be right in the Pacific, for the start of the millennium. In the first millennium, 1000 AD, the largest city in the world was Cordoba, we would say. There were over 1 million people living in the city. This is when there was no New York City. There was no Los Angeles. There was no Dallas, Texas. London and Paris were only small villages. The great capitals of the world actually had to look toward the Muslim world. This is where the Tawhidic understanding came into play, bringing in the knowledge of all the peoples of the world. And so it was a common thing at that time in Cordoba and Granada and Toledo and Seville and the great capitals, but especially there, it was common for a Muslim to be able to read and speak Arabic, also to read Latin, also to speak a dialect of Spanish. And then because people were coming in from Germany and they were coming from different parts of the world, they were able to pick up many different languages and then translate the knowledge of the ancient ones and put it in this new form. And so the present day modern system owes its basis to Muslims. This might be a shock to you, because if Muslims are only trying to blow up the world, how can they do anything positive? Zero is an Arabic letter, a sifr. The concept of zero, which was probably first used in ancient Egypt. I had the chance to go to Egypt, to Misr, to Saqqara, the temple of Saqqara. And underneath the temple of Saqqara, there are hieroglyphic writings, and on there was zero and decimal numbers. This is like 3000 BC. They had zero and decimal numbers. They were doing complicated brain surgery. They knew the nervous system, and they knew the skeletal system. In ancient India, they were also using zero for a long time. So the Muslims took this knowledge, brought it together, and gave us the present system that we have. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the Arabic numeral system. You're counting in Arabic. The computer, the binary numbers, it's Arabic. So the basis of the computer age actually came out of what we would call the golden age of Islam, where Muslims developed understandings like algebra from Jabr, also calculus, trigonometry. All of these were expanded and developed by Muslims. The scientific method, the basis of alchemy is alchemia, chemistry, the scientific method. Also even the historical method. And when we read Ibn Khaldun, his Muqaddimah, we see the basis of the historical method. Some even say that history comes from Ustur, Asatir al-Awwaleen. It is the stories of those who came before us. And so the basis of the science that we have today, the basis of city-states, the basis of civil society, civil, organized, structured society, came in its modern sense out of Muslim capitals. Because the Roman Empire had fallen and China was landlocked. It wasn't affecting the rest of the world. And so it was the Muslims who took this knowledge and then made it available to the world in a Tawhidic form. Now, one of the important things that was done in that time is that the environment was seen to be the creation of Allah. And so therefore, if you were a scientist and you were doing a scientific experiment, you wanted to bring water into the city. And it is said in Cordoba and Granada the water was flowing in. Every home had running water. The streets were lit for 20 kilometers in any direction. This was a time when the great capitals of Europe were in darkness. At that point, this Tawhidic understanding. So how do they bring the water in? They don't fight against nature. They don't see nature as the enemy. They understand the principles of nature and then use gravity, building aqueducts, building canals. And by using the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Creator, put into the earth of gravity, then the water comes naturally down from the mountain and it flows into everybody's home. So you don't have to dam anything up. You don't have to destroy anything, but you flow with nature. You see, that's what Islam really means. It's the fitrah. It says move with the gravity. Don't fight gravity, but flow along with the gravity and then use that power in order to benefit yourself and benefit humanity. What is happening today, we are living in a world that is about to explode or implode, to destroy itself. Recently in South Africa, a group of the leading scientists on earth came together and they studied the environment. They studied archaeology. They studied the movement of people, the movement of living things. And they came to the conclusion that we are on the verge of what is called the sixth extinction. From their findings, there were 5 great extinctions. And you have to go back hundreds and thousands of years. And you will see, because of what possibly could have been asteroid impact, carbon dioxide changes, massive carbon dioxide poisoning, continental drift, you'll find that forms of life were destroyed. At this point in time, there were 5 extinctions. We are living in the 6th extinction. And in this extinction, it is said that the victims would be plant life, mammal, it would be mammals. Okay, mainly it would be mammals and birds. Plant life was before, reptiles was before. This time, the victims would be mammals and birds. And we have killed over 50% of mammal life on this earth. You will be shocked to know that half of the rivers and water and fresh water bodies on earth are now polluted. In Canada, we live under acid rain, which means because the pollution coming out of our factories, that sometimes when it rains out, the rain is poison. So the rain that was supposed to be a rahmah, a mercy from Allah, is adab. It's a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming down upon our heads. And so it is turned around. Only 40% of the ancient rainforests are left. we have destroyed 60% of the trees on this earth. Fish are dying. All types of animals are dying. Diseases are coming amongst us that we never knew before. Muslims have the key to this problem. In Surah Al-Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. Corruption has appeared on the land and the sea because of what people's hands have done. And we will make them taste something of what they have earned in order that they would return to the path. And so we see corruption, al-fasad, is on the bar and bahar. Now, it's interesting to note, and you will find in Tafsir al-Qurtabi, you will find that the Sahaba, actually the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they spoke about this ayah. Some of their discussions was the fact that this fasad fil bar, it would be qahat, qillat al-nabat, that the droughts would come and that vegetation would decrease and that the barakah, dhihab al-barakah, that the barakah is leaving. And in most of the countries of the world, you will see that life 20 years ago was different than life now. It was slower, and that things were more natural, and the foods are starting to change now with the modernization, with the misuse of technology, and life is starting to speed up. Most of us, looking at our watch most of the time, we don't even have time for our own families. We don't have time anymore for our own self. The barakah is gone, man. The blessings are gone. They also spoke about al-fasad fil bahar, inqita' sayd al-bahar, that the fish in the sea would be cut off. They would decrease. This is an amazing tafsir, because this tafsir shows us the environmental problem that we are having. Because of what we did with our hands, we had the technology and we misused it. We were more interested in making money than we were in preserving life and looking to the natural society. And this is where in the aboriginal societies you will see that people lived in a natural way. And now in Africa, there are scientists who are coming to different people in Africa and going back and trying to find out, how do these people live? How can these people live along with the environment itself? I was in East Africa once on the island of Lamu. Lamu is in Kenya. So on the island of Lamu, the Swedish scientists were there, and the Swedes were looking to the Swahili culture to try to find out how did they live with the environment. They were Muslims. Now, one of the interesting things is that in the Swahili culture, they are eating, they use the coconut. The coconut is a key part of the diet. Also, they are eating fish, and sometimes when they serve the food, they serve it on the leaf of the banana tree. That's your plate. Or they use wood, natural products. And so after you finish eating your food, then you throw away the waste, and it goes naturally into the environment, and it is able to mix with the environment. And then came Coca-Cola. When Coca-Cola hit and Pepsi-Cola came, after you finish drinking your Coke and you throw away your can or you throw away your plastic, where does it go? It doesn't mix with the soil. It festers and it becomes poisonous after a while. And so even though we are able to drink Coca-Cola on the top of the Himalayan mountains or in the middle of the desert, we can drink a Coke. Even though we're able to do that, we are destroying the environment all over the earth. And so the Muslims have the key, and that is living in a natural way with your environment. Use your science with respect for life. Before you develop something, before you develop a piece of technology, you have to ask yourself, what will be the impact, the environmental impact upon my society today? And in America, the native people look 3 generations before they move into an area, before they build a house, they say, what will be the impact for 3 generations before we make this move? And that is how people have to think about the environment now, before it turns against us completely and the 6th extinction is completed. In the area of racism, it is stalking the land. And people of different colors and different ethnic groups are starting to look at each other as enemies. Sometimes for reasons that don't make sense at all. For political reasons, ego, for sometimes just fighting over a little piece of land. You find ethnic groups fighting against each other. When Islam came, it said there is no fadl, there is no preference for the Arab over the non-Arab, or the non-Arabs over the Arabs. There is no preference of white over black, or black over white. Illa bit taqwa. It is only with piety and right action in your consciousness of God. This is what separates people. And that type of thinking needs to be reinstituted into society itself. On the spiritual level, we recently went through a big change in the Easter season. And I know that Easter is also a very big celebration here. Now, what's happening to many young people, and I went through this crisis myself, as being a Christian, from a Christian family, I went through this crisis because in trying to worship God, I was very much into the Lord's Prayer and into worshiping one God. And then when Easter came, and I used to study history a lot, and they said it's Easter season, and suddenly I saw eggs, bunny rabbits, chickens. I said, wait a minute, man. What did this egg have to do with Jesus, Isa alayhi salam? What does a bunny rabbit have to do with Jesus? In studying the history, we found out that there were actually nature-based cults in Europe and many parts of the world, and you have what is called the spring solstice. And when the winter season goes, and when the spring came in, the people who worship the sun, and who worship, their worship is based upon natural changes. They had a goddess whose name was Ostre, or Ostern. That's where the word Easter comes from. And they said she used to wave her wand, and everything that was dead would then come back to life. Okay? So that's Easter. So when the Christians came now, the followers of Isa alayhi salam, they came into Greece, and they were spreading the teachings in Greece and in Rome, and they came into these events, Easter and Christmas, the winter solstice. According to our historians, and many of the Christian historians, Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, was probably born in the warm weather. And it shows you because when the taxes were being collected, it is because the harvest. Also the shepherds had their flocks outside. You can't have your flocks outside in Philistine at nighttime in the wintertime. So most of your records will point to the fact he was born in the warm weather. Why then is his birthday celebrated on December 25th? Why do you have a Christmas tree? Why do you have a mistletoe? Why do you have holly? Why do you have Santa Claus? And Santa Claus has now become more important than Jesus. I don't know how important Santa Claus is in Australia. Is he here? It's pretty far away from the North Pole though. Where I come from, this is North Pole country, man. Santa, he just goes a little way to get to us. Why now is Santa Claus so important? Because December 25th was a day called Saturnalia, for Saturn, the god of the sun. Bacchanalia, for Bacchus, the Greek god of wine and sport and play. December 25th was the birthday of Mithra, or Mithras. Look it up in the encyclopedia. Look up the word Christmas in the encyclopedia. Look up the word Easter. And you will find it is a nature-based cult that has been combined with the teachings of Isa alayhi salam. And when the Romans were torturing people in their colosseums, and the Roman emperor, he wants to have a good time, so he says, feed these Christians to the lions. Feed these Christians to hyena. Today we go to the Colosseum and we watch rugby. We watch football and they fight each other. But in those days, they would feed the Christians. So somebody amongst the early Christian missionaries, some place they said, there's an old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. You can't beat them, join them. So we need to make this religion interesting or fair-seeming to those who have the winter solstice and the summer solstice. And so the mixture then came, and suddenly it came about with a new way of life, and that is the reason why a Christian can look at a Jew today and say, I'm not a Jew. Actually, the followers of Jesus, peace be upon him, all of them were Jewish. And he came very clearly not to destroy the law of Moses, not to break it up, but to fulfill the law, to keep the Sabbath. But the Sabbath is disrespected. The laws of Moses is disrespected. So it's a different way of life, and a confusion then comes in where you're not sure which holiday you're celebrating. You give your friend a nice Easter egg. Even some Muslims who don't understand this history, one of the Muslims, they came, it was Muharram or something like that, and they brought me an Easter egg and they said, Muharram Mubarak. So they had bid'atain. They had two bid'ahs. One for Muharram, and they also had the Easter egg, bid'atain. Muharram Mubarak on an Easter egg. Okay? And so the confusion comes in, and Muslims have the solution. That is the straight belief in one God. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone, Allah, do we worship, and to you alone we seek our help. On the economic level, we are living in a state of confusion. And as I left from South Africa, and I'm coming into Australia, and we're trying to figure out prices. So you say, okay, the rand, the Australian dollar, the American dollar, the Canadian dollar, this one is up and that one is down, and this one is in the middle, and we're all in a state of confusion because the money is going up and is going down. In South America, where I spent a lot of time, in Mexico, the peso and other things, I mean, this money is useless. You want to buy anything and you need to bring in a wheelbarrow full of money if you want to buy just something to drink. So why is it going up and down? Because the bills that we have are false promissory notes. The bill was originally set up in order to give you a promise to say that if you have $1 Australian, then the bank has an equivalent of gold. And so now your gold, you have a promissory note, and the amount of your gold is being preserved by the bank. But with the system of interest, where people were lending the money and making money without having the gold, now there are so many promissory notes and there's no gold to back it up. So therefore the American dollar is the strongest dollar in the world, and you come to Australia and you say, and people look at you, I have a US dollar. Everybody bows to the US dollar. Right? This is the new sijda. Right? To the one eye on top of the pyramid in the dollar bill. Everybody's making prostration. Why are you prostrating to the US dollar? The Americans have the largest debt on earth. They owe something like $400 billion, man. They're in debt. More than any country in the world. Why is their currency the most powerful? Because you're living in a system that is not real. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. The same way your bond or your mortgage, it's an illusion. And you go to the bank, and in South Africa people are driving BMWs. In Cape Town, there's more BMWs than in Germany. They're driving BMWs, but when you look at the people, 9 out of 10 people don't even own the vehicle. The bank owns it. But he says it's my car, and I look good. He's driving his BMW. It's an illusion. It's what we used to call in America, you have biology, psychology, it's called tricknology. Tricknology, understand that? Tricknology. It's an illusion that has been made and put in front of our eyes. And so, it is a great blessing to be a Muslim, to have a way of life that has a clear belief in one God, to have a way of life that does not make a white man superior to a black man. To have a way of life where white and black and white learn to love each other, not to hate each other. To have a way of life that has a science that can take us out of the environmental crisis. To have a way of life that has an interest-free economy. To have a way of life who will be governed by a khalifa and not by a president or a king or a prime minister or any false construct, but to be ruled by a khalifa. That is part of the blessing of being a Muslim. But I want to say in conclusion to the Muslims who are here tonight that Islam needs practitioners. In order for Islam to come alive in the land, somebody has to be Muslim. It can't just be in the books. There are no more prophets to come. There are no more messengers to come. And so I leave a message to you from your brothers and sisters in North America and in Cape Town, that there are 3 ways of the many ways that we can have a positive impact on this society right now. And I know and I believe, inshallah, that you already have begun the work. The first is Tawheed. That we need to get to every home in Australia the concept of Tawheed. That everybody has a chance to learn that there is a way of life that has a scientific system, a political system, an economic system, a social system. At the basis of this way of life is the belief in God. Tawheed also makes us brothers and sisters in humanity. It also respects knowledge wherever it comes from. And so we need to get this message out to society. Secondly, tahara, purity. First, taharatul i'tiqad, the purity of belief. That Muslims, number one, need to go back to the lines of their faith and to purify their faith, to take out any false teachings that have come inside this faith all along the way and take us back to the first 3 generations, the first generation of the Salaf, of those who came and got the message directly from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the ones who took it from them. We need to be able to go back to that fresh water and drink the fresh water and make it alive in the land. I don't mean just drinking the water and then stay at home, because the second part of the message is to take it out to people. Taharat al-badan, purity of the body, teaching the proper cleanliness, hygiene. Also tahara in relationships between people. That people have to realize the condom is not the solution to AIDS. The condom only increases AIDS. And I don't know who it was who started this. It's probably the condom making factories that actually start pushing this thing, because it didn't even work for venereal disease. Calling to the good and forbidding evil. This is another great mission of the Muslims. This can be done in a very positive way, working with civil society and showing the people in the society that there are those who will stand up against drug dealers, who will stand up against crime when it's happening in society, stand up against racism, stand up against anything that will destroy the society, destroy the environment, and ruin our planet. This is an important mission of the Muslims. And we have been commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take this out to the people and to let every home hear this message. And so I leave you with these words, and I echo the words that came in the beginning in the Australian way, a boomerang. As we heard in the beginning, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And who is better in speech than one who calls to Allah and does righteous deeds? And he says, surely I am from the Muslims. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. I said what I have said, and I ask Allah to have mercy upon me and you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.